Let's see if this is working. It's probably going to yell at me to turn something. Yeah, close unused applications. God. All right. Let's just see what happens. So, I would like to tell you first that I'm boundaries and belonging session next Saturday. And that is a lot like what it sounds like, but it's wildly different every time. That's why I just keep calling it the same thing, although each container ends up uh, very much its own creature depending on who joins me in it. I cap those groups at 10. It's $85. It's a half day. And we go into the relationship between boundaries and belonging because they are totally inextricably linked. Our sense of belonging determines how we hold boundaries. If we're grabbing at other people for a sense of belonging, it's much harder. It's much harder to hold a boundary. But when we have inherently a sense of trust in our sense of belonging, we hold boundaries effortlessly because there's no, this is the topic I want to talk about today, rejection, failure, humiliation, because we know in holding a boundary, we're turning toward life and away from what is life denying. So when I got dressed this morning, I put on this shirt designed by my friend Kate McCabe. Mistakes were made. And it looks like somebody kind of like jizzed on her face, which, can be a mistake and can not be a mistake. Really, only retrospect will tell. I find myself thinking a lot about failure, humiliation, rejection, because there's really no way of knowing when you're in the midst of one of those things. So for me, I try to cultivate a sense of invitation toward failure. In Zen, there's this thought that practice, like that, there is no such thing as enlightenment. There's only continuous practice realization. And then that's also been rephrased as one continuous mistake, continuous failure. And I really like that perspective. I know there have been times in my life when I've been rightly accused of actually cultivating failure so that I could continue to live in scarcity and play small and have this egoic satisfaction of pulling myself out of the jaws of death at the last minute over and over again, like bringing myself to the absolute breaking point, and then boom, magic happens. And I've fortunately, part of maturity for me has been growing out of that need to prove myself in that way. So I don't want to suggest that cultivating failure is the best approach. Like that fool in the tarot card deck that stands on the precipice and doesn't hesitate to leap. That fear of failure, that fear of falling, that fear of flying actually brings more failure than embracing that leap and knowing that you may go splat and you may find that there's no ground at all. So there's really nothing to go splat into. Every time I've taken that leap, it's just been another level of the game. A game in which there's no winning or losing. There's only the increased capacity to keep playing. When I was in my early 20s, when I started life as an actress professionally, and I had a lot of success right out of the gate, getting leads, playing all the things I wanted to play. I got to play Deirdre the Sorrows. I got to work in improv comedy in New York, and I just got to do all these wonderful things that it felt like everything was going according to my dreams and my plan. And then I had this thing that happened that was wildly successful by all external metrics that I was intimately a part of, but then ended up for me personally bringing failure, rejection, and humiliation. And at the time, because it was such a high and then such a low, I didn't really have that taste for failure yet. that desire to welcome failure onto my knee and give it a sandwich because it's an ally, not an enemy. But at that time, I didn't really understand that yet. So I, God, I spent so many years just being bitter and angry and afraid. Like there was, what would I try again? What would I do? The dream that I had been building my whole life toward to that point was gone. So who was I without that? And I think that's one thing that keeps us from loving failure, from welcoming failure. I don't think we have to love it necessarily, although I think that is helpful. But we do have to welcome it. We do have to invite it to the party. We have to invite it with a sense of possibility, wonder, awe, to marvel at it. Because right on the other side of it is success every time. And both of those things are, of course, really relative. But until we invite them in wholeheartedly, we are out of relationship with them. They have no relative place in our life because we refuse the invitation to that relationship. So the more I agree to be always in relationship with failure, rejection, humiliation, the more, seemingly conversely, I'm turning toward life. I'm turning toward freedom. I'm turning toward being fully alive. I'm turning toward boundaries with ease, toward belonging with ease, because I trust life completely. I trust that as long as I'm here, I'm held, and I didn't trust that for a long time, which impacted my life in so many different ways. By leaving me feeling dead inside, by leading me to drink every day, by leading me to believe that people were against me who were just trying to love me. And so many of our lives are squandered in this way. By asking other people to prove that they're safe before we open. By pushing, pulling, and putting our energy somewhere instead of just allowing it to permeate. When we put those blinders on around goals and purpose, this is why I really don't think of myself as a coach, because I feel like coaches help with goals and purpose and clarifying those things. And those are all very yang energies, very outwardly focused. And I think those are all emergent properties. Purpose is an emergent property. Purpose has emerged differently at different points in my life. And it's my business not to determine what my purpose is, to determine what my goals are, but to follow my own life force. Wherever it takes me. The fact that I'm sitting here in Maine, the great state of Maine, by the way, talking to you, holding a boundaries and belonging session next weekend, holding a new fuck suffering group the week after that. The fact that I'm doing the work that I'm doing in the world now is a total surprise to me. If you had told me even 5 years ago that this is where I'd be talking to you about these things, feeling a sense of openness and confidence and trust in life, in the very thing that I spent a long time wanting to end. God, it was just too painful. I didn't want to do this fucking slog through day after day of misery anymore. That I took failure as an enemy. I took humiliation and rejection as enemies. I didn't see them as the allies that they were. And if I see them as enemies, my sense of belonging is completely thwarted. It's completely thwarted. Life is not against me. It's teaching me how to edit. It's always turning me toward more. It's always turning me toward what is more fully alive. Always. And once we trust that intimately, then our full expression emerges naturally. Then we can't help but being who we are, living the life that we have been given to lead, not somebody else's idea of who we are or what our life should look like. I had a client last night in my group who had been on the precipice of liberty so beautifully, had walked herself there. I had held her walking herself there, and she got to that tip, looked down into the chasm between her life force and her life, and said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to leap. And for me, in the guiding work that I do, that is, the hardest part of this job is letting go of attachment to outcome. Like, it's not my business. My business is just to hold the hand. Hold the hand. I've been through this wilderness before. I can guide you here. I have been here. Let's go. Let's go courageously. Let's go wholeheartedly. But ultimately, the trip is yours. And so watching her come back to a place of fear, scarcity, mistrust, fear of failure, rejection, disapproval, just stepping away from liberty and back into her preferences. And watching how her mind worked to completely align with what was misaligned. And how often do we do that? How often do we stay in the safe place with the safe person in the safe house, even as we can feel that hum inside of us? We can feel that surge of energy that's actually being provided to us to take that risk, to actually meet that emergent action with vigor. And instead we cap it and we're like, oh, I'm anxious. Oh, this is anxiety. I don't really know what to do with this. No, the problem is you know exactly what to do with it and you don't want to do it. As Jeanette Winterson wrote, what we risk reveals what we value. What we risk reveals what we value. If we risk nothing, it reveals that we value nothing. What am I willing for my life to look like? How far am I willing to go? How flat on my face am I willing to fall? Pretty fucking flat. I've done it a couple times now. It's more than a couple, actually. And that's the thing. Failure, that's why I bring up that Zen saying, continuous failure. Continuous practice realization is continuous failure. It's all a process. And the depth at which we fall matches the height to which we rise, because we expand our range. We expand the range of our nervous system capacity. We expand the range of our body, heart, and mind to hold reality, to hold the reality that's right in front of us, to hold this moment and to not need to leave it, because we have the capacity to put it on our knee and wrap our arms around it like a grandmother and offer it a sandwich, no matter what it is, no matter how bad it scraped its knee, no matter how many times it fell off its bike. This moment can be met, can be loved, can be welcomed. Welcomed. Failure, rejection, and humiliation welcomed. Every time we reopen our bodies, our minds, and our hearts to an experience that is uncertain and unknown, we ourselves expand. And the things that keep us from our full expression, all that plaque in the pipe starts to fall away. But man, with that with full expression comes a lot of responsibility. And that brings up the point of like, are we afraid of failure? Or are we afraid of what success means? Are we victimized by scarcity, or do we love it? Are we victimized by struggle, or are we addicted to it because of the toxic mimic of aliveness that it provides, so that we don't have to pay attention to the thing that all of that energy that we want to call anxiety is actually summoning us to do? What if I fail? What if I'm in the midst of failure right now? What if the chief areas of desire, love, money, and health, what if I'm failing in all three right now at this very minute? What if nothing right now in my life actually belongs with me? Do I trust life enough to make that edit? I do. I do. Because I'm a guest at this surprise party. I'm not the host. And I'm very grateful to have received the invitation. And I'm very grateful that I didn't make the Irish goodbye a few years back. Because I never would have gotten to this place where, holy shit, it is really one surprise after another if I'm open to it. If I can float here in this space of not knowing, instead of flailing and grabbing at something to keep me afloat, that's how I wear myself out and drown. If I trust that my body floats. And here I am. If I'm here, I'm held. It's crazy to me now that that should be such a leap of faith. But it is. To trust that if I'm here, I'm held. It doesn't mean that things won't go. It doesn't mean that things, people, health, love, and money won't come and go in a way that's totally out of my control. When I surrender control, I find compassion that always begins with self-compassion. So if I fail, I rub some self-compassion on it. If I'm rejected, I rub some self-compassion on it. If I'm humiliated, I rub some self-compassion on it. And I mean, humiliation is a tricky one because you really have to decide that that's how you're going to receive some circumstances. I mean, I'm pretty impossible to humiliate at this point because I just wouldn't take it. I wouldn't take it in that way. It would be metabolized before it ever reached my core. And I was writing recently about middle-aged online dating, and some people came into my inbox, some people made some comments, and just there is so like that piece about love. I mean, maybe that's the most tender of all those three areas of desire. Money is sort of external, health is also intimate, but there's like not always a whole lot we can do about that. I mean, there is, but but love, man, I know I really have fucked that one up so many times. Partly out of fear of failure, partly out of being in the arms crossed, prove to me you're safe position before I open. I'm not going to open until you show me you're safe. Well, who wants to do that? Why should I be asking that? Make me feel something. No. If I come and open, I'll be received how I receive. And if I'm not being received how I receive, by being open, I will notice that immediately. And I will be able to hold a boundary and move toward what's alive and away from what denies life. So what is failure in that context? It's just motion. It's just process. It's just editing. It's just turning this way and that. Being turned by life rather than by my ego and my ego's preferences. allowing my ego to be a loyal companion on the path who knows how to poop outside because I've trained it, because it's now the wolf at the end of my leash. The wolf doesn't run me. My wild heart stays lit because I've tamed my ego from love. I'm not trying to kill it. All these people talking about kill the ego, kill the ego. Ugh, why would you do that? The ego serves a very important purpose, just like the body does. Is all of that impermanent? Absolutely. And that's the beauty of it. That's part of like coming back to the middle-aged online dating thing. Like, my body is impermanent, and I'm in that middle point between the portals of birth and death where decay has begun. I'm in the middle of that lit field. I can see where death is. I can see where birth is. And I'm in the middle of those beautiful twin portals. That's a lit field, not a catastrophe, not a failure, not humiliating. And to embody the eros of that sweet spot is also not humiliating, not a failure, not something to bring shame, but something from which to turn absolutely toward this precious, precious life. I love this life so much. And maybe more so because there was a point when I thought of ending it. And I can't fucking believe I'm still here. And I'm just so glad I am. And I'm so grateful for the work I get to do in the world now. So grateful to live where I live. And I would not be here at all without failure. And the more I love it, the more it loves me back. The more it's able to be gentle with me because I am gentle with it. Failure and I have tamed each other. We've grown in metabolism. We've grown in wisdom together. Not an enemy, a friend, an ally, a true companion. Always transforming. As long as I stay in relationship with it, that relationship is always transforming. Something new is always emerging from it. Failure becomes success, success becomes failure, and how I'm turned determines what that looks like. How I'm turned. It's not external circumstances. External circumstances are external circumstances, but my response is my becoming. My response is my responsibility. My response ability is my becoming. Let me know if you would like to join for Boundaries and Belonging next weekend on Saturday, the 23rd. Or if you would like to go right into the deeper dive of a 3-month fuck suffering group, that's where kind of the super magic happens. That starts on the 26th. You can go to my website, reihance.com, REIHANCE.com, to learn more and sign up, or you can just DM me, or you can send me an email at hi@reihance.com, REIHANCE.com. I hope you have a beautiful, beautiful weekend that's replenishing after all of this budding and blooming of early spring. I'm feeling a sort of pause this weekend. Replenish. Rest is fertile. Rest is fertile. It's so easy for us to forget that sometimes. See you on the other side of something. Bye.